In this video, I'm gonna talk about the way criticism works with a narcissist and one that has ADD combined. It's really unique. It's a lot of fun. I'm sorry these podcasts have been so rambling, and I listened to them over again, and I know that I'm not following like a tight line of order or logic in these stories. I think eventually, like if you listen to me ramble for like 5 minutes, I will get back to the point that I was trying to make eventually with each little thought that I have. But just understand that I'm in the process of moving right now, and so I don't have like a desk. I don't have a good headset. I don't even have a piece of paper and a pen to write out like a logical sequence of ordered thoughts for this. So please bear with me. And I promise, like, if you can listen to these few blogs of mine, then they will get better in the future. And it's just really it's been really therapeutic for me to express like some of the things that happened to me and how I felt. Okay. Now I want to devote this recording, as I said, to the criticisms that I received. And there just were so many, and every day, and so wearing after a while. It was so destructive. Like everything I did, she found fault with. Okay. I think I talked last time about the lists. Like I couldn't do anything in draft, and just have it in draft and work on it, knowing that, like, okay, I know there's like a few things with this document or this plan or this, thing that I need to execute like in a couple weeks. I know I need to have it completely straight, but I have time to work on it. You know what I mean? Like if I was doing something like that and I had saved something in a file, I had to like hide it from her in the directory because she would find it and pull it up and take it, look it over and find things wrong with it. Even when I would tell her that it was in draft form, okay, and that I was still working on it. Sometimes I would even tell her, like, you don't need to make spelling corrections on this document because it's only in draft form. And so I am working on it, okay? I will get the spelling errors. I know there are spelling errors in it. Don't worry about them. I see them. I will get to them, okay? I couldn't even do that with her. Like, she would still pull up that document. All right. She could never resist. I don't know. Like, it was just so weird. Like, why she felt compelled to find mistakes in everything. You know what I mean? Like, I could go out the door. I could have a day where I ran all day from room to room to room and fixed problems with AV equipment. And I can't explain to you like what this job was like. Some of our rooms had like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of top of the line AV equipment. We had racks and racks of equipment, and all of it, was connected to computers and projectors and screens and all of these things, right? And all kinds of things would go wrong. And you would open up a lectern or open up a rack, and there were just wires and cords everywhere. This was just one aspect of my job, okay? And when I first got there, I received no training, none. And I didn't lie to get into this job. Like, she saw my resume. I came with a background of like instructional design, okay? And I worked specifically in ADA, like Americans with Disability Act, instructional design. And I also came with a graphic arts background and a marketing background. And during my interview, like, there was another guy in there. I think it was the gentleman who had the job before me who was leaving, or it might have been the department head. I really just don't remember. But I remember him looking at my resume and like furrowing his brow and looking at me and going, "Do you have any experience in AV?" And I was like, no. I said, I have worked as I did used to fix the computer problems for teachers in the department that I was working on my doctoral studies in. Like, I was always the go-to person. If I happened to be around and there was a problem in the room, people would always call me. I am good with technology. I'm one of those rare people who is artistic, and I'm really good with software, okay, and technology. But I had never experienced anything like this, okay? And I just knew like how to do some things on a lectern. I didn't know anything about like AV racks or sound systems, microphones, like speakers, how projectors, lift tables, how all of these things worked. I didn't know anything about it. And I answered the guy truthfully. I'm like, well, I can, put my own PC together at home. Like, I set it up myself, and I am kind of the go-to person, in the other department, but I don't have a lot of experience in AV. And I remember him looking like confused, like, why is she even interested in you? And that's what I could see was spinning around in his mind. And she goes, it's okay. I will all that stuff. I can train you. It's really easy. She goes, it's easy, and I'll train you and you'll get it right away. That's the easy part. She goes, what's the hard part is how you interface with professors. And especially when they're under stress and you're under fire to fix a problem. She's like, oh, only certain people can do that. And she's like, I can see that you will be able to do that. And she was right. Like, I had wonderful relationships with the professors that I worked with on a daily routine basis. Like, they loved to see me coming. They knew me by name. They never went through her when they had a problem. They went straight to me. They used to ask for me specifically. I'm still getting emails from these professors. Can you do this for me, Mary? Mary, can you fix this? Mary, can you come here? Can you do that? And my email is on forward. Like, a huge announcement went out to the whole, school, the university, that I'm leaving. I'm not there. And they're still emailing me. I've been gone for 2 weeks. Oh, anyway, I'm going to miss them so much, but it just goes to show, all the problems and stuff that I had getting along with this woman, I really don't think they were me. I mean, it might have been a combination of her and me together, but definitely that combination of us together couldn't happen without her. She would be the other half of it. And I was the positive energy half, and she was the negative energy half. But anyway, getting back to the training and the the criticism, okay? So she hires me with full-on knowing straight up what's on my resume, what skill sets I have. And she knows that she has to train me. And she told me when I got there, when I first settled in, that she would train me. She never trained me. She just didn't. And she knew she wasn't training me because she told me, she's like, I don't have time to train you. I don't have time to train you. She was doing 3 different jobs at the time, in her defense, right? 3 different jobs at the time that I was hired. She was doing advising. She was grading papers. She wasn't in any way, shape, or form qualified to be grading those papers. It was not, the papers she was grading were decisive of whether or not a student actually earned his degree in the end. It was like a practicum paper in a field of study that she never set foot in one of those classrooms in her life. And how did she ever get that responsibility? I don't know. I'm sure she did fine at it. She just told me that she just corrected for grammar, form, and focus, but that you didn't really need to know the content or the context of what they were writing in. But I'll tell you what, if I were paying for a degree and I was in that department and I found out that she was the one grading my last paper that would be decisive of whether or not I got a degree, I would be suing people, okay? Just totally, I couldn't understand it at all. But anyway, she was doing that. She was doing graduate advising, and she was doing all of the account stuff for our classrooms. And so she kept complaining about this load, and so finally she just complained so much that they finally started uninviting her from group meetings. Okay, she used to go to all these meetings, and all of a sudden, 4 or 5 months into my job, she's like, would come in huffing and puffing, like upset about something. And I would just kind of look at her like, God knows what she's upset about or whatever. And she'd start in and she's like, they're having a meeting about this topic and that topic. And I would look in like to this conference room, like I'd walk by and it would be important deans, okay, department heads, not friggin' people like her. She's like she's a glorified admin role, okay? She's not a department head. She's not making important decisions about the direction that we're going in as a department. She has absolutely no inkling of how to market. She doesn't know anything about student affairs. She doesn't know anything about any of that stuff, okay? She knows about like finance, like how to buy a big piece of equipment and pay it off, okay, and how to like get that money from a grant or something. Like she doesn't apply for grants. She just knows where the grant money is in the department, and so like how to write the request forms for that money. Okay, that's what she knows. That was the only aspect of her job that I didn't learn on my own how to do and was doing 100% correctly by the time I left. Okay, so I'm like, well, why aren't you in there or whatever? Because she used to go to all those meetings. She's like, they de-invited me. Do you see like a pattern here? She got uninvited or told not to attend her church meetings anymore. She got uninvited from these important meetings. The only reason why she was in there in the first place is because she inserted herself. And then as soon as they figured out she knows shit, why does she need to be in there? They uninvited her. There were a lot of things like that she got uninvited to, and a lot of things that she inserted herself into. And then she would try to get me to work on these things that she inserted herself into, like marketing, for example, okay, and website management. We have entire departments at our university, entire offices with people who have master's degrees, 20 years of experience, marketing, producing graphics, writing up content, publishing to social media sites, all of this stuff, okay? Purchasing distribution channels for marketing, radio, whatever, newspaper, I don't know, whatever kinds of like print documents that they would advertise in like different magazines or whatever, podcasts, placement ads, all of these things. Like, we have people who have spent their whole life doing that kind of thing. And she would just start like, okay, I'm going to rearrange the website. Like, Mary, you know how to write HTML and CSS. I want you to change this around, change that around. And I'd do it for her, no problem. I mean, it was just, I don't really care what work I was doing. So long as she just would leave me alone, I would do it, right? But like I was saying, she didn't have any knowledge of like how to, this is not her field of expertise. So if we have entire departments employed to do those sorts of things, why not let them do it? Why is she inserts herself in everything, okay? So that, and I don't know why. I mean, she would get in and it would be clear she didn't know what she was doing. So it wasn't like she got a dopamine hit of feeling important in those roles. I don't know. Maybe she's just trying to keep herself busy. But anyway, yeah. And so this is the ADD thing. Okay. She would have me work on developing web content, and it would be like a huge table of classes that I was listing. So I would have to put it all in an Excel data sheet, make sure it was all perfectly correct, do all of this formatting in Excel and then bring it into the website and, then format it in there and do all of this crap. And I would do the whole thing. It would take me like 2 days or whatever. And believe me, this would be because of the way that the CML worked, not because of my lack of skills. I have many years of experience with web design, HTML, and CSS. So I knew how to do it. But the program that we were using was not that, I don't know, just wasn't, it wasn't like a program you could work quickly in, let's just say. I would do all of these things for her, and then exactly as she told me to, and then she would save it, and I would go back a few days later and look, and it wouldn't be in the, like, the public or the published state. And I'd be like, why didn't you publish this? And she would say, well, I'm not sure that that's exactly how I want it. She's like, it's correct. She's like, don't get me wrong, but I'm not sure that that's how I want it. I think I want it like this. Can you do it like this? And I'd be like, okay. And I'd redo the columns in the table, or do the width different, or place the table in a different position on the page. It just would go on and on and on. And then finally she wouldn't use it at all. I swear to God. Okay. All right. Now, so that isn't about criticism, but that's an example of like her just compulsive neuroticism, to be like constantly doing busy work and inserting herself into things that she really has no business doing. She's certainly not hired to do, and it's beyond the scope of her role in what she was doing in our department, right? But she had to have her finger in something to make herself feel important. Like, she honestly used to tell me that she would go to this meeting and that meeting just so people could see her and remember her and what she does in the department. Like, oh, out of sight, out of mind. That's what she thought, you know, and she wanted that to be known for what she did, which was like directing our program, like our AV program. And like, people don't care that, you know, the people who are the ones that want to be, that people want to see and hear from, are the deans and the professors and the movers and the shakers. She was nobody. All right. So anyway, with training and criticism. So what would happen is, like, somebody would call from a room and say, okay, this is broken, that's broken, come over and fix it. And this would be, eventually would become my responsibility to go in to find out what was wrong and to fix it, right? And I had no idea how to do that when I first got there. And so I would go over sometimes and try, and it would take me a long time to do it. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what the equipment was. Like, I didn't know a camera from like a video recorder, you know what I mean? And I had no idea how all of this stuff was connected to display and computers. I just didn't know. And I couldn't find any, like, she wouldn't send me to any training, and there were no books or anything, manuals, catalogs, guides, nothing. Right? Because I would have gotten out a book and looked it right up, or if there'd been like a operational manual, there was nothing, right? So I was going to make one. She didn't want me doing that anyway, because that's how I learned something. Like, I will look stuff up. I'll look up a schemata. There was nothing. So then of course, I'd be over there for like 10 or 15 minutes, and meanwhile a class is not going on because there's some major piece of equipment that's not working. So she would come in a huff that I was taking too long, right? And she would get into the lectern, and her butt was so big and she was so broad, I couldn't see around her to see how she was making a repair. And she wouldn't explain to me what was wrong. She would just make it, close the door, and start walking out in a huff, like, because I didn't get it fast enough. And I'd be like, well, what, you know, we'd be walking back, and I'd be like, well, what exactly was it? And she goes, oh, it was this. It was this plug in this certain, and she would say it like whatever the technical piece of equipment was. She wouldn't say, well, there's this wire with this jack, and you know the plug there that goes into this third hole in the computer that's like coated in the blue plastic, like that blue plastic insert needs to be connected to this portal over here. Do you see this? So every time you go into a room, like, that's one thing that you can check if you see this problem. Never, never, never did anything like that. If she what she would say is, she would give all that B socket thing really, you know, needs to go into the A freaking portal thing on the QV10. And then she'd just keep walking. And I'd be like, what the hell is she talking about? You know, I don't know what any of that stuff is, and she knows I don't know what any of that stuff is. Sometimes she would send me out the door, and her instruction would be like, go set the F2B socket into the, you know, whatever port on the Dell, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? I can't even remember the terms. I'm glad I'm getting out of this field. I never really learned it completely. I don't know all the terminology. I just kind of know by looking at it what might be wrong. But I had to teach myself that. This went on for the solid first year. All right. Okay, this video's getting long, this recording, so I'm going to stop and insert the second part of this. So just give me a moment here. Please hold. So as I was saying, this went on for about a year. And she would also give me instructions to do other things. Like she would say, update the software or go to, there's a new update for such and such an application. Download it all for all the rooms and install it. And like, I had no idea how to do this. Do I need to like download the update onto a memory stick and take it into the rooms and insert it into the piece of equipment and do an update that way? Was there a way to do it from a cloud? Which all of the equipment in the room they're all different models? Is this update only going to apply for certain models? Like, how do I know these things? She would give no part of that instruction. It was like essential to doing this job correctly and effectively. She would withhold all of that information, and she would give these directions as if like I would already, like it was assumed I would already know what she was talking about. And if I, tried to say in a humble, honest way, like, I really don't understand what you're asking me to do, that just would set her off. Like, she loved that because it would give her an opportunity to make me feel stupid, and it would set her off. Oh, well, don't you know? Like, you can go to the website and find that out. And I'm like, why are you talking to me like that? Like, why is your tone like that? I have trained student assistants underneath me to find these problems and fix them right away in the first couple weeks of their employment. I have taken them into rooms and trained them to do these updates. I have gone into rooms with them to make repairs all within the first few weeks of their training. They know almost now as much as I do about how to make those repairs, and I never once talked to them like that. We had fun. I made little jokes up with them. I showed them visually how to make these repairs. I encouraged them. I thanked them. When they did things right, I was like, that's great, right, you know how to do this stuff, And I would give them steps to work through, like how to find a problem in a rack, an AV rack. I never made them feel stupid if they couldn't figure it out. I'd be like, well, Johnny, it's, maybe it's this thing, try this, or did you try that? I never had to make them feel like a complete and utter idiot because they didn't look something up on the internet first without even knowing the name of the equipment or what company made it or anything, right? She would do that constantly, and what it did was it created an opportunity for her to criticize me. This would go on every day, and if it wasn't every day, it was at least a few times a week where I'd be assigned something like that, and it was totally cryptic what the hell she was asking me to do. And I mean, it could have been anything. Like, she could have been asking me to put a rocket together. Like, I had no idea. Like, in the technical terms that she was using, I had no idea. And the manufacturing names, I had no idea. I wouldn't know. I just didn't know the different manufacturers, like who made what equipment. Like, I sort of knew the names of the equipment, like lift table, projector, computer, but I didn't know like who made those things, So she would just call out these names and these model numbers. She'd say it over her shoulder. Of course, she wouldn't even be looking at me because no empathy. There again, no empathy or no care for whether or not I was understanding. Like, when I taught class and I was teaching a new term, I would say the term and I would look at individual students to see in their eyes whether or not they were receptive to learning that term, and whether they were interested in it, and whether or not they were grasping the term, okay? And a lot of times I saw rejection in their eyes, all right? So that's like on me. Like, I've got to find a way to inspire them to learn. And I don't take it as an insult, right? But that just goes to show, like, that's how somebody who has empathy acts when they're training somebody. Like, you try to understand what they know, what they don't know, and you try to inspire them to learn, and you encourage them to learn. And I got zero of that, okay? And in fact, I got made to feel a fool every time I needed to learn something. And I can't even tell you, like, I would pull in to my parking space in the morning, and I would start walking across the parking lot And she always got in like a few minutes earlier than me. And the light would be on in our office, and I could see it from like, 2,000 feet away. And I'd see that light, and my whole nervous system would just start to like cringe and ache and belch and like vomit. I hated going in. I hated her. Like I could see her in the office from a distance, and I just started hating it. And I hated working with her, and I hated going to work every day, because every day all it was about was like one opportunity after another to criticize me, one opportunity for her after another to display a lack of empathy for who I was, what I was doing, what I could bring to the table, what I had worked on, as far as degrees and this sort of thing, my prior education. I was still in school. She had no interest, and I was going to school for what we were working on, education technology. And she never would say to me, well, what class are you taking now, Mary? And can you figure out a way to apply that knowledge to this position? And I think it's great that you're doing that. And hey, that's really an advantage for you. And I applaud you for making the extra effort. A lot of people I always wanted to go to school and learn new things. I would have loved for her to teach me. Anyway, this type of criticism went on for a year. And it was all the time. And she would love to point out any kind of error I had. And then when she started bullying me with this type of criticism finding, right? And I'll explain to you what I meant, okay? When I was out with COVID, she would text me 2 times a day, every day. And it was my first round of COVID, and I don't know, it was not the strong COVID. It was like one of the weaker ones, but it hit me really hard, and I was super sick. And she would text me 2 times a day. How you doing? How you doing? Did you take another test? How you doing? And it wasn't at all about her asking me if, having any empathy for how I was doing. It was about her constantly putting it in my face that I needed to be back at work, okay? So I went back early, too early, to please her. I was very sick. And so anyway, I was in that office, and she hated that I was in a separate office from her. So then what she started doing was, I had the ADA in place, and she kept trying to convince me that I could not do the job, right? And so therefore she could fire me or whatever. And I'm like, you can't fire me. It says right here, you need to give me more time to figure out problems, You need to allow me time to do my job correctly, to enter data correctly, to work with the computer correctly. She's like, if you can't do the essentials of the job, then you can't work. I'm like, I have the note right here. It says I can work, and you have to give me time, right? That pissed her off. So what she started doing was looking for work and looking for errors, and then she would call me into her office to point out the smallest of things. I would ask her for a model number on a piece of equipment, right? And she would call me into her office, and I'd get up and walk all the way in there with my head hanging low, because I knew it was time for the criticism, right? And she would say, I put that number, just like this, I put that model number in the chat, in the Microsoft Teams record 3 weeks ago, and you can't find it, and you can't remember it. What is the matter? How can I help you with this? That's how she would be, honest to God. And it really made me scared. And it was a way of her threatening me, bullying me, trying to get me to feel so out of it that I couldn't work, and trying to get me to quit. She made a lot of comments behind my back. I heard her saying to vendors that people who applied for ADA benefits were losers and lazy and just not wanting to do their work. She would say these things in front of me. I'd be walking 4 feet behind her. She'd know that I would hear her. She'd know that I applied for ADA benefits, and that it was a giant hint, There was some other really big criticism thing that I wanted to talk about, and I just can't remember what it was, but those kinds of things all the time, and eventually just like what it did was it just started wearing away at my self-esteem. Like I walked on eggshells all the time. I knew that she was going to find mistakes in my work, and I'm like, why is this happening? Like, I must be dumb. I must not be capable of this. Somehow I have 3 master's degree and I have all of these technical skills listed out on my resume that I know I feel 100% confident in, but somehow I'm stupid. And like, somehow I'm not doing this job. And like, why is this? Like, oh, I know this thing about, I had no self-esteem. I know this thing now about the criticism. I know what it was. We had this new professor come in, and he was brand new to our system, and so he had no like ID set up in the system. And I needed to schedule him for recordings, and I can't schedule him for recordings if he doesn't have an ID set up in the system. And we had been through this. Like, this was my 3rd semester there. Every semester we had new professors come in, and every semester I would have to get a hold of an enterprise, rep to have them added into certain applications, to have their email and their IDs entered into these applications so that I could schedule them. And I know full well, like, she told me, this is a new professor, right? And I'm like, how come I don't recognize his name? And she goes, because he's a new professor. Right? Like that, of course. And I'm like, how come I can't, like, at first I was like, I can't find his account. She's like, he's a new professor, that's why. Right? So I know, because it's been 3 semesters now, that if we have a new professor, I need to get his ID created, like an account created for him, right? And so anyway, when I couldn't find the account, she was a little bit puzzled too. Like, she wasn't sure if he was a new professor or not. I don't know. There was some kind of confusion. Maybe he was an adjunct or something. And so this was like a problem that occurred at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, one afternoon, right? And she took our laptop home that night. I remember that. And then the next morning, she walks over to me and she says, okay, I was up all night working on this problem with this account, and it's time for you to put your thinking cap on, Mary. And blah, blah, blah. She starts walking over to me, and I just felt fucking rage coming up my spine, like, how dare she say something like that to me? It just was the tip of the iceberg. Maybe it wouldn't offend anybody else, but it offended me to the max. Like, I felt like it was so rude and so degrading, I just took offense by it, like, really, really seriously took offense to it. And I couldn't control myself, and I just started shaking in my chair. Because this has been, like, now every day I'm coming in there for, like, 15 months. And I know that I had done the right protocol. Right? And I knew that what I had done was correct. And every day she's looking for something, right, to find fault with me. And she's telling me that to put my thinking cap on at work today. That's what she said. She didn't just say, put your thinking cap on. She said, I need you to put your thinking cap on at work today. And I looked at her and I said, as if I don't wear my thinking cap every day. Right? I said, that is hugely insulting to me, that you should say that to me. And I said, you need to apologize to me. And she just, again, like, her eyes rolled back in her head, like, how dare you challenge me, I said, there is nothing wrong with my intellect. I said, and you told me the other day that this was a new professor. And I said, I've done the right protocol. I contacted the admin for the enterprise system and requested a new ID be created for him and a new account with that ID. That is the correct protocol. I said, for you to insinuate that I don't use my thinking cap every day is like insulting to me, and I don't need to take that. I said it to her like that. And she just stood at me. She's like, whoa. She's like, she goes, I didn't mean anything by it. I'm like, you did. I said, you mean something by it all the time. I'm like, you are always insulting my intelligence. I said, don't think I don't notice. And she's like, She ended up crying and leaving. I had it out with her. And she tried to tell me, like, I said, you are always insinuating that there's something wrong with my intelligence, that you think I'm dumb. I said, I am not dumb. I'll tell you right now, I am not dumb. Like, I have 3 advanced degrees and a 4th one in my pocket. And, I said, I have over 170 graduate credit hours in this college, this university, and my grade point average is 3.98. I've had courses in philosophy and geospatial and art history and, a lot of hard courses, medieval history, Spanish, all of these different things, like French postmodernism, all of these. There's just not a thing wrong with my intellect. And I said, you are constantly intimating that there's something wrong with me, and there isn't. So she runs out crying, right? And she says, before she runs out, she goes, well, I'm sorry that you took it that way. And I'm like, no. I said, I'm not accepting that. That's not a genuine apology. That's you gaslighting me now. That's you telling me that I'm interpreting something incorrectly and that you're sorry for my incorrect interpretation. I said, I know what your interpretation is because I've had this interpretation now for months on end. I said, I am not stupid, and you need to not say things like that to me, and you need to apologize, and I want a genuine apology. So she runs out crying. And I'm like, fuck her. Like, I'm not putting up with it, And so she comes back like 10 minutes later, and she's dabbing at her eyes, and she goes, I'm sorry. And she goes, I'm sorry for saying that to you. I'm like, look, you're not going to get away with this. I said, you can't say you're sorry about how I interpreted something, and you can't say that you're sorry that you said something. You have to be sorry for the way that you're feeling towards me, the things that you're expressing towards me, and for your intention to hurt me with them. That's the only apology I'm accepting here. She's like, well, I didn't know it was going to land like that on you. I didn't know that was going to happen for you. And I'm like, you knew exactly that was going to insult me. I said, you took that problem home last night, that account, and you said you worked on it all night and that you were thinking about it the whole drive in here. So I said, you had all night and you sat there and thought that I was too stupid to solve this problem. And I said, and you thought about it the whole way driving in here. I said, don't tell me you got up from your desk without thinking and walked across the floor and said to me I had to put my thinking cap on. And like, you never gave it any thought that you were going to address me in that manner about this issue. I said, you thought about it all night, all morning, and in the drive-in. And she just stared at me. I let her have it because I just could not, and I was not going to accept her bullshit. And then she goes, this is the ADD part. Well, I say it before I even know what I'm doing. I can't control it. And that's when she started crying again. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't care if you think you can't control it. You need to get control, and don't ever insult me like that again. Don't do it. She turned around. I'm not exaggerating. This is exactly how the conversation went. She ran out the door again crying. And I'm sure she either went down to that lady's office or she went out to talk to her husband or something. And she came back in the room again, like 5 minutes later, and she's like, okay, I'm really sorry. She goes, I don't think you're dumb. That's the last thing that I intended to say to you, or that I meant. All right. So this recording is almost done, but that's the kind of shit that I went through day in and day out, and it just wears you down, and it makes you feel like you can't think, that you don't have a brain, that you are dumb. And to this day, every day, I wake up feeling like I'm useless, and that I'm going to make mistakes, and I'm going to fail, and that I'm a failure, and that I can't do it, and I have no confidence, no self-esteem. That's exactly what they want. That's exactly what they'll get from you, and they'll use all of that to demote you, or as an excuse not to promote you. So when I tell you to pay attention to the warning signs when you're being interviewed, I mean it. Because here I am 18 months down the road, and I feel I have zero self-esteem. I didn't get promoted, and I have to look for another job. I don't want this to happen to you. Serious.